Congratulations to the honorees. It's always a pleasure to be at Israel Bonds events. I hail from Philadelphia, so of course my alliance is for our home team today, so I'll make a pitch for that. My remarks this morning are going to focus a little bit on some of the challenges that we're facing around the world, but predominantly one of the #1 issues that we're dealing with at large, I would say, within academia. And that has to do with the question of what is the boycott movement, or the acronym known as BDS. BDS stands for Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions. It has today become the only prism in which, unfortunately, students in academia, and I would say around and in general, are able to discuss the Arab-Israeli conflict. BDS has become the springboard for all anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-Israelism, in which the framework has been discussed. The problem with BDS, of course, has to do, with the fallacy that it positions the Arab-Israeli conflict in a black and white arena. It is a discussion of the fact that there is two constituents that you look at the university today, that is students and professors. On the one hand, students are barraged by other student groups and attacking for their Jewishness, for their pro-Israel stance. And on the other hand, you have faculty who have turned their classrooms and transformed their classrooms into podiums of cascading a fallacious narrative. We're here on the 95 corridor, just to kind of put it into context. Rutgers University, one of the largest state universities, has one of the largest Jewish populations. For the past 3-4 years, it's been pretty quiet, but over the past year has experienced an increasing level of anti-Semitism. They have now hired a former spokesman of the Assad regime. They have a professor who's been tweeting anti-Semitic tweets, but more egregiously of all is a professor by the name of Jasbar Puar. Puar is a professor of women's studies, but has also been part of the American Studies Association. She wrote a recent book called The Right to Maim, arguing that Israeli IDF soldier policies is to intentionally maim Palestinians to dehumanize them. There is nothing factually, there's nothing correct about it. I'm quoted all over the place, so I will cite that, saying it's academic garbage. But this is the kind of book that gets the imprimatur of a university. Above all, the book was published by Duke University Press, so it gets the imprimatur of a university, so of course it will become a qualified secondary, if not a primary source, within college classrooms. And of course nobody debates that. All one has to do is to Google to find a different picture. But that's the kind of narrative that we're facing today within the discussion about these issues. Critical is also to understand how this is all played out and where it's all coming from. Arguably, BDS, I would say for a fact, directly comes out of a PLO playbook. In the 1960s, there was an understanding that maybe Israel could not be defeated militarily speaking. So in order to make this happen in a nice way, the Arab Palestinians and sympathizers of the Palestinian cause have decided to hijack what we call in the social sciences agents of influence or soft power, and that is through academia and journalism. And since for the past, I would say, 50 years, if not more, what we were seeing is a hijacking of North American academia, where you saw, and you see it on an ongoing basis, the Saudis, other Arab states have been buying chairs and departments in American universities with the idea of the fact that if one buys a chair or a department, one buys the politics in which these topics are being taught. So, by the time BDS in its modern day formulation plays into the repackaging of 2001, 2002, after the Durban conference in South Africa, it already feeds into a pre-existing condition where you have the majority of individuals who teach topics related to the Middle East at large, and I would say in general within the humanities, teach out of this perspective. And so it wasn't a new concept. They already fed into a pre-existing condition. And the only difference has been really within the repackaging and the rapidness that this has been taking place through social media, Facebook, and other incidents at large. The other basic tenet of BDS is rooted in an idea that some of you may or have not heard of. Every group that supports the idea of the boycott movement subscribes to the idea of anti-normalization. Anti-normalization is rooted in the idea that any interaction between Jews and Palestinians is forbidden. Case in point, last year there was a group of American Jews who went to Ramallah to celebrate the end of Ramadan. When they left the Ramadan dinner, their cars were torched. There was no less than 10 minutes later a YouTube and a tweet that went out by the leaders of the BDS movement saying, no interaction is allowed. This kind of dialogue is forbidden because it takes away from the totality of the movement at large. Those are the kind of incidents that you are looking at. Jewish students today, there's a little stats to put it in perspective. About 42% of American young Jews on college campuses on the East Coast will experience some level of anti-Semitism. On the West Coast, it's much worse, between 71 and 72.5% as a result of the arena that they are facing today. The conversation has been, and I would say, and I travel a great deal in Europe as well as around the world, in North America, there's still a kind of a healthy, so-called healthy debate. When does anti-Zionism bleed into anti-Semitism? I would say that we are already there, as a majority of what you see on American college campuses is synonymous to anti-Semitism. However, the opposition, professors, and other kind of groups basically like to argue that we want to engage in all forms of Zionism, including anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. So anti-Zionism is allowed, anti-Semitism is racism, so they get away with curving their way around by only discussing their anti-Zionist ideology, even though it is anti-Semitic. But that's to put it even further, to underscore where and how problematic this issue is. Who are the funders and who are the orchestrators of this narrative? The number one group that springboards this kind of narrative is a group called the SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, underscoring the word justice, very catchy, very attractive in the issue of just causes. SJP is basically the offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. The individuals who are funding these kind of activities is a group called the AMP, the American Muslims for Palestine. Who are the AMP? The AMP are the individuals who were not arrested after 9/11 for ties to Hamas. They are basically the groups today that are funding the SJP. They have a very clear, distinct narrative with Muslim Brotherhood money, with a very clear agenda of the destruction of the State of Israel through what is considered to be economic warfare, through BDS. Now, I've mentioned, of course, a lot of problematic issues and things that are a little bit pessimistic, but let's talk about some positive issues and what we can do about some of these issues at large. First of all, the best response to divestment, of course, is investment in Israel, and of course, no other place to do that through going through the investment of Israel bonds in Israeli, in everything Israel does as far as infrastructure and at large. That's part of the anecdote to the anti-normalization, is part of the normalization, seeing Israel as a normal state that is worth investing in. Second, there have been about 24 states that have issued and have legislated anti-BDS legislation. That's very positive. However, there has to be also some accountability and transparency within academia, because every time, while there is legislation against BDS and arguing correctly that no ally of the United States should be boycotted, so of course as long as the United States and Israel are allies, we should maintain that relationship, and that of course is critical to maintain that along. However, academia says that, of course, government is trying to interfere with our academic freedom. So we have to hold our institutions accountable. Stakeholders and alumni should be speaking out as to what is happening in their alma maters. Most Americans know, and most Americans like to give to their alma maters, to give to where they had an experience, to give to their kids and their grandkids, to have that same kind of experience. We have to hold our institutions accountable, knowing exactly where it hurts their pockets, exactly by saying we deserve some kind of element of balance. I teach and write about the Arab-Israeli conflict. I teach the Palestinian narrative, and I teach the Zionist narrative. That is not common practice. The problem is that predominantly most individuals within the social sciences and within the humanities at large will face this one-sided, fallacious narrative that has no element of balance. And the fundamental question is, of course, if we are educating, which we are, the future voters, what are they learning when they're talking about these issues? And again, there is no balance in particular on the issues of this topic. And you go back to the 1967 war, as far as the Six-Day War, it was very clear that Israel was the David and the Arab world, the Palestinians, are the Goliath. 50 years later, that metaphor has shifted. Israel is the quintessential Goliath today, and Palestinians are the quintessential David. Students freshmen today who are on college campuses were born in 1996, 1997. When the towers fell, they were 6 or 7 years old. There is no historical anchors. Holocaust, 67, 73, does not fall within their viewpoint. It's not a generation, millennials in particular, and next gens, that remembers a time that Israel was ever right or did not exist. And so the entire formulation of Zionism, which the immediate connotation resorts to being accused of being racist. And so that is part of the larger environment that we are looking at. We have an obligation, I believe. And part of that is that it should not be the first time that students face these issues by the time they become freshmen on college campuses. We have them 12 years in the bubble. So part of our responsibility is to teach and talk about the story. We have a phenomenal story that needs to be told. It's not being told well enough, and it's not being told enough, period. And there has to be this inserting of pride and identity, where today, if you poll and if you look at Jewish identity at large, there's a growing wedge between Judaism and Zionism. Something that was a given 50 years ago, that correlation is having a difficult time showing that kind of glue between the two elements. Something we need to be working on. And of course, above all, we have to have a responsibility to our institutions to hold our institutions responsible for what's happening within the classrooms. There has to be a help and an idea that, when you come to a university, which should be an exchange of discourse, that should actually be taking place, not only a one-sided element. So those are the challenges that we know. So there is some positive and there is some negative. Positively, I would say, over the past 17 years, we are seeing a better sense of empowerment by Jewish students. They're getting, they're speaking out against the issues, not enough. We are indeed winning some significant battles, but we're not winning the war. Let me put it into context. The opposition has done a phenomenal job. While we have names, our Jewish names, on many university buildings around the country, the opposition has bought the education. From a cost-benefit analysis, they've done a much better job because they bought the education while we have the buildings. And that's part of what we need to be looking at. There are no quick fixes to this specific issue. But where I'm sitting today, and I'm looking at a 15 to 20-year trajectory, we have to start looking at the arena now. Because if we don't start changing the architecture and the balance that we see in academia, there's going to be no balance whatsoever. In Europe, that is indeed the case today. In Europe, there is no balance at all. So if you kind of want to put a mirror in the eyes of what North America is facing, just look towards Europe. These are the kind of things we need to be doing. But investing in our future, investing in Israel, is very critical. This is part of the number one issue that I would say, as far as what we need to be doing as far as normalizing Israel as an antidote to anti-normalization. But this is a larger issue that needs to be looked at very clearly and something that we need to be working on going forward. So on that note, I thank everybody for their time. Mazel tov to the honorees, and of course I'll take as many questions. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes, oh, sorry.
The unbalanced teaching that occurs presently, does that also occur in the public school system, such as State University of New York universities?
Yes.
So therefore, we have an obligation or a possibility here to address the situation on our level by simply letting our representatives and the school system know that since we're paying the bill, we'd like balanced program split.
We should. I mean, you know, that's exactly what happened with the CUNYs and with Brooklyn College when a lot of the things were happening out there as far as the bias in these issues. You know, at Brooklyn College, there was a huge to-do where the poli-sci department sponsored a vehemently anti-Israel pro-BDS spokesman, and so there was movement. Yes, we have to hold the institutions accountable. These are our taxpayer dollars at work that are not being, you know, so it crosses, it goes state school and private schools. And I think we have an obligation. New York is one of those states that has passed BDS. Actually, the verbiage and the language of the New York legislation was one of the more stronger versions that I've seen out there, because the argument was that if you boycott us, we're going to boycott you. Some of the other states did not pass that kind of legislation. But yes, we have there's an obligation to make this happen. And I think that that's where we have to say, you know, money, first of all, no money should be given to any university today without strings attached. And I think that, you know, in a good way, by the way, apropos Israel bonds, you could give your gift through bonds to ensure the fact that the money would be invested in Israel. You could give it through stock or any other kind of bond in order to ensure the university will make that happen. Positively, no North American university has endorsed BDS. What you're seeing today, which is, I would say, a slippery slope, is that individual departments and disciplines and associations, American Studies, Modern Language, they're the ones who are invoking BDS. So that's, you know, and the faculty is dictating a lot of this.
I didn't say exclude teachings. I said presenting a balanced program.
Yes.
Additionally, most private universities take public funds.
Yeah.
So the same analogy can extend out to private sector as well.
Agreed. And
finally, publicizing those particular universities that don't abide by a balanced educational program.
100%. I mean, you know, again, the role of any academic institution and any educational institution is to present a balanced perspective and to present both sides. If that's not happening, there should be, you know, naming and shaming is definitely a tactic that needs to be used in order to put pressure to produce those kind of that kind of correct information. Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to let you know, I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's also in the lower schools as well, because my daughter had taken, I don't remember if it was an advanced social studies course or whatever, if it was the end of middle school, beginning of high school. And they were going through all the ancient civilizations, and then there was a discussion, or I don't remember how detailed it was in class, but it was in the book.
Right.
And I found it. And it said about Moses being the supposed prophet for the Jewish people, Jesus being the supposed prophet for the Christians, but Muhammad was the one true prophet of God. And it's there.
You sold me.
What?
You sold him. You convinced him already. I mean, what I'm saying, you know, this is, you know, exactly, you know, well, it has a direct trickle-down effect to the high school level. The way, unfortunately, history and social sciences are being taught is that everything is, you know, Holocaust, 1945, World War II, issues pertaining to the Arab-Israeli conflict fall under current events. You should not be teaching a topic that has a rich history as a current event issue. And so there's no room to, you know, continue that conversation. So that is indeed something that needs to be looked at very carefully. The other, you know, while we're here, I would also say on the issue of the high school levels, one of the #1 partners for BDS activity today with the JV, with the Jewish Voice for Peace, on the hard left are Quaker schools. The American Friends Service Committee are the #1 co-sponsors. There is a very high correlation of Quaker Friends high schools and that kind of narrative. I'm not saying, but that's an ongoing thing. Yes, ma'am.
You said it was up to the states. What about on the federal level?
Happens on both ends. I mean, you know, you talking about the legislation?
Yes.
The legislation that has happened, you know, on the state level, you know, individual states, you know, have legislated anti-BDS law. You know, within the federal level, a lot of it has to do with the boycott against with the Arab states in the 70s. You know, as far as the oil embargo, some of that's part of where the language is coming from. It's much stronger on the state level to hold universities accountable, especially state-funded ones. With those kind of monies. However, there is a larger understanding on the federal level that, again, we support U.S.-Israel relations, and that should be upheld, and there should be no boycotting of those kind of Israel at large. But, you know, there's a much deeper drilling and accountability at the state level when it comes down. So that's kind of the hierarchy of how it's been presented in a legislative way.
Doctor, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Oni Schweitzer, Senior Program Director at Israel Bond, to say a few words.
Thank you and good morning. On behalf of Israel Bonds, I'd like to thank everybody for coming here. Also thank Asaf Romirowsky and also Mazel Tov to Maddie and Mike Ross. We also want to thank Ron Schwartz and Bruce Hartman, Stu Spector, and the entire breakfast committee for making all this a reality once again. We also want to thank the synagogue. Congregation Bet Tikva is one of the longest running campaigns on Long Island. And as mentioned before, purchasing an Israel bond is not just a way of helping to boost Israel's economy, basically all aspects of its economy. It's also a way to boost your own personal portfolio. And as many of you know, because many of you have purchased bonds before, you can purchase bonds of all different amounts, fixed, the variable rates, maturities anywhere between 2 years and 10 years. You can purchase it as a personal investment, or you can buy it for a child or a grandchild. The timing is actually pretty good at this point because the rates just jumped. The rates are now as high as 4.10% per year. So we encourage you to do your own financial homework. Compare this investment to other investments that you might be involved with. The Mazel Tov bonds, which are anywhere between $100 and $2,500, which again are very good personal investments or gifts. Those right now are paying 3.86% per year. So again, we encourage you to do your own homework, and whether you're investing for yourself or whether you're purchasing for somebody else or whether you're buying a bond in honor of the Rosses, we encourage you to review the options, and we thank you for your time. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing to that. You know, we obviously encourage everybody to invest in the state of Israel, but if there's anyone here that feels they could not at this point financially invest in a Mazel Tov bond, which is $100, Congregation Bet Tikva has a restricted account, so if you would like to make any kind of donation, whatever you want, to our synagogue, toward the purchase of an Israel bond in the name of Congregation Bet Tikva, you're welcome to do so. Over the years, we have purchased bonds. Once we've accumulated $1,000, so that's something you may want to consider. If you do elect to do that, just when you send your check into the synagogue, we can't bill your account, but when you send your check into the synagogue, please indicate clearly that is for the Congregational Israel Bond. So thank you if you want to avail yourself of that. I'd like to at this point introduce someone that does not need any introductions, Rabbi Weisblum, who will make the presentation for my Gennady Walk.
Good morning, thank you. Big Yashar Koach. God bless you, especially the people who put together the Israel Bond. We just heard how important it is for all of us. Big Yashar Koach to Dr. Asaf, to all the guests. About a week ago, while I was setting up eventually the office, I found a very special CD. This is a CD that goes back 11 years ago, at the time of One Top Jewish Center honored Mary and Mike Ross for their tremendous devotion for the community. And while I was thinking about my short remark for this morning, I think the most proper one is the one the rabbis put for the Tu B'Shvat, the festival of the grove. There is a statement in the rabbinic writing that bless those people who do so much for others, for community, for family. And it goes like this. Ilan, Ilan, O tree, Bameh avarechecha. In which way should I bless you? Perotecha metukim. Your fruits are delicious. Tzilcha na'eh. You shed, it's great. The way you appear, it's beautiful. Amat hamayim yoredet tachtecha. You have around you a stream of water. So what's left? Ela, but I bless you, sheyu acherim kemotcha, meaning that the future generation will follow your footsteps. Obviously, Mary and Mike a role model not only as a husband-wife, leader in the community, in the education world, and many more avenues, but they're also a great role model as the parents and the grandparents. You are so fortunate, Kenai Nahara, to have a wonderful family, children, grandchildren. So the only blessing, as we said, is Shiyu kahem kemotcha, that they should have the zchut, the merit, to follow your good example, your footsteps. Amen. God bless you all. This is the start of Star of David Award. Who in the spirit of King David? This is Hebrew. Who in the spirit of King David had demonstrated devotion to the land and people of Israel through exceptional leadership and dedication presented to Mary and Mike Ross by Congregation Betikva today and Bnei Torah and all friends on February 4, 2018, Israel Bonds, Mazel Tov.
Try singing.
Thank you. Rabbi Weisblum, Dr. Romirowsky, Mr. Fletcher. We'd like to thank Congregation Betikva for selecting us as this year's Israel Bond honorees. We are both thankful and grateful to all attendees, especially our children, grandchildren, extended family and friends who have come together to support our shul and the state of Israel.
Congregation Beth Tikva is our second home and family. The shul has always been here for us in all our life cycle events, to celebrate bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings, ofras, and to offer comfort and strength upon passing of loved ones. During the last 42 years that we have been members, we have made many cherished and long-lasting friendships, which have extended beyond the shul.
We took our first trip to Israel with shul friends in 1984. At that time, we talked about the possibility of a trip at an Oneg Shabbat, and it became a reality. 4 couples in the group bought a $1,000 Israeli bond that year to be exchanged in Israel. The rate of the exchange was 100 shekels to the dollar. We actually walked out of the bank carrying 100,000 1-shekel notes in a brown paper lunch bag. I think 2 of us here remember that.
Our second trip in 1987 was to celebrate our son Matthew's bar mitzvah. This trip coincided with our daughter Lisa's visit to Israel on US-wide pilgrimage. Saul and Bibi Feld, long-standing shul members and friends, met us at the hotel for the event. Our third trip to Israel with the shul was in 2009, and now we are looking forward to this year's trip, once again with our shul family. Israel transforms in miraculous ways every time we visit.
Special thanks to Ron, Bruce, and the tireless committee for putting this event together and for the fantastic brunch. We are ardent supporters of Israel bonds. We purchase them for ourselves and gift our grandchildren with Mazel Tov bonds each year. We are proud to contribute to the strength of our Jewish homeland. Please join us in commemorating the State of Israel in this manner. Thank you once again for this most important offer.
Before we conclude the singing of the Bircha HaMazon, I'd just like to say a couple of things. I'd like to thank Maddie and Mike for allowing us to honor them this year. As you know, they well deserve that honor. I've been doing this with my committee in full or in part since 1994, and I've seen this building on the average raise about $100,000 a year in Israel bond sales. Thanks to everybody here today, and maybe some folks that have mailed it in and others that will mail it in. Right now, today's sales for Israel bonds from this building is $200,000.
Wow.
So, on behalf of Israel bonds, I'd like to thank everybody in this room for participating.